Hi folks, here we are again. G60's back in sick bay. We've got good news and a little bit of, no, not so much bad news, but okay news, I suppose. Nothing to be too excited about. So turbo's probably done a good 5,000-6,000 Ks now with this setup. And bores, obviously with the tuning and stuff like that, it hasn't been fully dialed in, or it's taking some time to get it dialed in closely anyway. The bores don't look too bad. I'm not sure if you can see there. See if we can turn on some light. There's no deep scratches. They are a little bit shiny. I would probably prefer them to not be quite as shiny, but we'll see what happens when the head comes back from the machine shop. The good news is the carbon and stuff I've seen on the tops of the pistons and the head sort of indicates to me that I can afford to run it a lot leaner than what I have been. Probably been a little bit too close on the super safe side at low 12s under sort of high torque applications, and probably low to mid 14s in cruise. So coming back from Fraser a couple of weeks ago, I've noticed that it's quite happy cruising along in the high 14s and 15 air fuel ratios running on petrol. But anyway, we'll see what happens once we get the head back on it. The head mainly come off because of a blown head gasket previous to driving it. We had an airlock in the cooling system and didn't realise at the time when we were running it. It was just happened to be running just long enough for it to do a little bit of damage. So it's off being repaired. Anyway, rocker gear and valve train looks good. Like I said, the bores and etc. look pretty good. No lips on the cylinder walls or anything like that. So anyway, lots going on. We got a big trip planned in December where we're heading to the northern parts, or the middle northern parts of Queensland, up to Mackay, but we're going to do a bit of a western detour up through Emerald, stop at the Tablelands and stuff like that, and make our way up to some family we've got in Mackay. So we've got lots to do, and I want to make sure the truck's A1 before we go and get this tune dialed in, mainly for fuel economy and so we can prevent any further damage to the engine. My plan is to, once I've got this fully tuned and pretty happy with everything dialed in properly so it's a turnkey operation, is to build another engine as a spare and have it ready to go and drop it straight in, then just tweak the tune to suit it. So anyway, one of them things is going to be, in this wiring loom, I've hidden a knock sensor. So that will take a little bit of doing. Pull that out of the loom, set that up. It's going to go around the other side of the block. And I know nothing about knock sensors as far as dialing them in and getting them working correctly. I believe that's going to go into the hands of an expert on the dyno with a knock box, and he'll take it from there, I guess. On top of that, my shed's an absolute mess. Got stuff everywhere. We got little things like rebuilding washer bottle pumps. Here's the brushes out a little motor, and I've got a couple of bits and pieces off at the bearing shop trying to get a little seal for it because I can't find another spare pump. So we're going to fix that up. Paint a couple of things. This was pretty rusty the other day, and I stuck it on the lathe and rubbed it with a bit of sandpaper and cleaned it all up. I'll paint that, clean a couple of these things up, and on the bench here, another little project before we go is to set up a drawer and somewhere to put the fridge, so it's a little bit more comfortable in the back of the car. We haven't got a lot of room, it's only a little car, but yeah, that's going to make our life a bit easier. Carrying a little stove, I've sort of set everything out there and drawn it out on the board so everything fits in the little drawer underneath, and the fridge will go on top. New viscous hub on the fan because it's old and worn out, so I replaced that. Gasket set's ready to go there, rocker gear. Anyway, back over here, around to the back of the car. A few other things going on. there's no springs. So in my previous post, I actually stuffed up the rear springs in order. I had to get them shortened in order to get us on the road for its very first Fraser trip. It was long before the turbo days. It was just a matter of getting the motor in the car and getting the diffs under the car to make it work. And I pulled the springs out of my wagon, MK wagon, and they were just miles too big. They were way too long. But as it stands right now, once I've set everything up a little bit better, I'm putting most of that length back on. At the time, we were trying to deal with the original spring shackles, which were quite small, and they just didn't suit those springs. And long story short, I made a mistake. I measured them wrong, and the springs were inherently very, very stiff because of that setup, which made a pretty awful ride. So hopefully it's going to be a bit better now. Springs should be back in a couple of days, get the diff bolted back in. And the other little modification that is going ahead at the same time as the springs is a new drive shaft. So this drive shaft is the original MK one. It's been shortened down to suit this car. Original MK 5-speed gearbox, but I rebuilt the gearbox a couple of months or 12 months ago, and I discovered in my process that you can fit GQ rear companion flange and the handbrake drum to this gearbox, as well as the H260 diff. You can take the big flange off of GQ GU and fit it onto the H260 diff here. And that allows me to run the bigger GQ tail shaft with the big unis, etc., etc. They're a much bigger tail shaft, much stronger. I have actually blown the rear uni on this truck. Not sure what went wrong. We weren't doing anything silly. It just happened, and it was quite a hassle to get rounded at the time because I didn't have any spare unis. Anyway, hopefully with the bigger tail shaft, bigger unis, etc., it's going to be a little bit more heavy duty and last a bit longer, and hopefully we'll never have that problem again, although I will still carry spare unis because I learnt my lesson. So moving on, the other thing was an air tank. Not necessary, but I had it laying around, and I'm going to put a little air compressor under the car. I've got a nice little spot hidden under there. This is going to be just a surplus air tank. Maybe, I don't know, haven't experienced it myself, but maybe it'll help speed pumping tyres up in between changing the hose over from one tyre to the other. It's storing a bit of air, I guess. I'm going to run a remote air pressure gauge up into the cab, run it on a 12 volt pressure sensor to activate the pump to cut it in and out, and just put it on a separate switch as well. So yeah, folks, that's about it. Bit of storage in the back. Like I was saying, it's a very little car. There's really not much room in here. Still looking for a spot for my secondary battery. Was thinking about punching a hole through the side there, fabricating up a box and a sealed lid, and put an AGM battery on its side, but haven't made up my mind yet. Still in the design process. I'll hopefully take some more photos and things like that as the rear drawer and back shelf comes together. Thanks for watching, guys. Cheers.